6 months after humanity first contacted the Galactic Council, the great chamber that had echoed with heated debates for 3,000 years stood almost empty. The massive hall that once held representatives from 47 species now hosted quiet conversations between friends instead of bitter arguments between enemies. The morning session began as always with the ceremonial call to order, but only 12 council members attended. Most representatives were busy working on joint projects, with former rivals or visiting new cultural exchange programs across the galaxy. Admiral Kresh stood at his assigned podium, his crystal form cycling through muted colors that showed uncertainty, the military concerns that had dominated council sessions. For centuries seemed irrelevant when species chose cooperation over conquest, trade. Minister Sluggoth coiled his tentacles nervously as he reviewed economic reports that made no sense in the old system. Entire civilizations were sharing resources, freely making traditional commerce obsolete. His department had nothing left to regulate. The session was interrupted by the arrival of the eldest council member, a being so ancient that their species name had been forgotten by history. They had remained silent for over 2 centuries, watching galactic civilization from the shadows. The chamber fell completely quiet as the eldest moved slowly to the central podium. Their form was difficult to describe, shifting between energy and matter in ways that hurt to watch directly. When they spoke, their voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. In all my eons of existence, they began. I have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. I have seen species achieve great power only to destroy themselves through greed and fear. I have watched empires span galaxies collapse because they forgot that strength without wisdom is meaningless. The assembled representatives listened with reverence. The eldest had guided galactic development since before most species discovered fire. Their wisdom was legendary. I have never spoken in this chamber, because I never encountered anything worth breaking my silence, for the eldest continued. But these beings from the small blue world have accomplished something I thought impossible. They have proven that advancement and compassion can exist together. The chamber remained silent as the ancient beings shared observations spanning millions of years. Most species follow predictable patterns, they explained. They develop technology to survive, then use that technology to dominate others. The cycle continues until they either destroy themselves or become so isolated they stop growing. These humans have broken that pattern. Captain Taemin had been invited to address the final council session. He stood with representatives of other human departments who had spent months working across the galaxy. His team looked tired but satisfied with what they had accomplished. The eldest gestured toward the humans. Tell us, beings from Earth, what was your greatest discovery? Was it faster than light travel? Was it fusion energy? Was it the cure for ancient plagues? Taemin considered the question carefully, then answered with characteristic human honesty. Our greatest discovery was learning that we are strongest when we help others be strong too. We found that sharing knowledge creates more wisdom than hoarding it. We learned that differences should be celebrated, not feared. He activated a holographic display, showing scenes from across. The council leadership gathered in their most secure meeting chamber, deep within the station. Admiral Kresh pulsed with determination, while Trade Minister Sluggoth coiled his tentacles nervously around the conference table. The other council members showed similar signs of stress, each in their own species. Typical way, we must understand what drives these humans. Admiral Kresh declared, his crystal form shifting through aggressive red patterns. Are they truly as altruistic as they appear or is? This elaborate deception hiding conquest plans. Binary, the mechanical collective representative, processed data through quantum calculations. Observation has provided insufficient data to determine true human motivations. Recommendation, initiate controlled test scenario to reveal authentic behavioral patterns. The council spent hours designing what they believed would be the perfect test. They would create a crisis situation that would force humans to choose between their own safety and helping strangers. If humans were truly selfless, they would risk everything to help. If they were secretly selfish, they would protect themselves first. The fabricated emergency was carefully planned. A mining accident on asteroid XK-739 in a remote system, several alien. Workers trapped in collapsed tunnels with limited oxygen. No nearby rescue ships except for a human vessel 3 days away. The asteroid had been chosen specifically because it offered no strategic value, no rare minerals, no military importance, no trade routes nearby. If humans responded to the distress call, they would gain nothing and risk everything. Council monitors were positioned throughout the system to record human reactions. The test would reveal whether humanity's generosity was genuine or just an act designed to win galactic trust. Lieutenant Dong Hyun was conducting routine patrol missions near the outer rim when the emergency signal reached his ship. The message was desperate. Several gastropod miners were trapped after a tunnel. Collapse. Life support systems failing. Rescue needed immediately. Dong Hyun studied the navigation data. The asteroid was 3 days away at maximum speed. His ship was not designed for heavy rescue operations. He had only basic medical supplies and mining equipment that might not be powerful enough to break through collapsed rock. His crew consisted of medic Yoon Jung, who specialized in treating traumatic injuries, and engineer Ki Tae, whose cutting tools were designed for ship repairs, not major excavations. They were not equipped for a full-scale rescue operation. Any reasonable military commander would have called for backup or waited for proper rescue ships to arrive. The smart choice was to request that better-equipped vessels handle the emergency. Instead, Dong Hyun immediately changed course toward the asteroid. Sir questioned his communications officer, Woo Ram. Shouldn't we contact Council Rescue Services? They have ships specifically designed for mining emergencies. Those ships are 2 weeks away, Dong Hyun replied. The trapped miners will be dead by then. We may not have the right equipment, but we have to try. The human rescue ship pushed its engines beyond safe limits, racing across space toward beings they had never met. Eun-jung prepared her medical equipment while Ki Tae modified his tools to work as emergency excavation devices. 3 days later, they arrived at asteroid XK-739 to find the situation worse than reported. The mining facility was completely collapsed. With no signs of life from the surface, the trapped aliens were buried under tons of rock with their oxygen running out. Ki Tae scanned the debris with his modified sensors and found faint life signs deep underground. 7 beings still alive. But barely. The rescuers had perhaps 6 hours before the remaining oxygen was gone. The smart choice would have been to call for proper mining equipment and accept that they were too late. Instead, the humans began working immediately using whatever. They had Ki Tae rigged his cutting tools to bore through solid rock, while Dong Hyun used the ship's tractor beam to move larger debris. Yeon Jung prepared medical supplies and set up a treatment area for any survivors they might find. The work was dangerous. The asteroid was unstable, and each blast to clear rubble risked causing another collapse. The humans' ship was not designed for this kind of operation, and the strain was damaging their systems. Council observers watched in amazement as the humans worked for 16 straight hours without rest. They took turns operating equipment but never stopped digging. They shared their food and water with each other and kept working, even when exhaustion made them clumsy when they finally broke. Through to the trapped miners, they found 7 beings barely alive from oxygen deprivation. The aliens were from 3 different species, all employees of a small mining company that could not afford proper safety equipment. Eun-jung immediately began treating them with oxygen and medical stimulants, while Dong Hyun and Ki Tae continued digging to create a larger escape route. The aliens were too weak to help themselves, so the humans had to carry each one individually through the narrow tunnel. The rescue took 36 hours total. The humans used all their medical supplies, most of their food, and pushed their ship beyond safe operating limits. They risked their lives for strangers who could offer them nothing in return as the rescued. Aliens recovered in the human ship medical bay. They began talking about their experience. The humans had shared everything they had. During the long, dangerous rescue operation, the humans had told jokes and stories to keep spirits up. They had treated their patients with the same care they would show family members. The youngest rescued alien was a gastropod child named Little Shell, who had been on his first mining job when the accident happened. He was terrified and crying until engineer Kai Tay gave him a small, smooth stone from Earth. "This is my lucky charm," Tay told him. "Every being deserves something beautiful to remind them that life has meaning. You keep this and remember that somewhere in the galaxy there are people who care about you." Little Shell held the stone tightly as he recovered. The human had given away something precious to comfort a frightened child of another species. This act of kindness stayed with him for the rest of his life. The council monitors recorded every moment of the rescue. The data was clear. The humans had risked everything to save beings they had never met. They had shared their resources, treated the aliens with genuine care, and expected nothing in return when the rescue ship returned. To Council space, news of the operation spread quickly. The saved aliens testified about human generosity. While the Council tried to understand what they had witnessed, Elder Goose, one of the rescued gastropods, spoke to reporters about his experience. "In 40 years of mining, I have seen many accidents. Most rescue teams demand payment before they will risk danger. These humans never asked for anything. They simply helped because we needed help." The young gastropod, Little Shell, showed everyone the Earthstone that Kite had given him. "He still has it." They said, "This human gave me hope when I thought I would die. How can beings from another world care so much about strangers?" The council leadership reviewed the test results in stunned silence. They had designed the perfect scenario to reveal selfish human nature. Instead, they had proven the opposite. Humans would indeed risk everything to help others, even when they gained nothing. Admiral Kresh dimmed his crystal form in confusion. The test was supposed to expose their true motives. Instead, it has demonstrated that their altruism is genuine. How do we explain a species that acts against its own survival interests, binary process the data through multiple analysis cycles? Conclusion: humans appear to have evolved beyond typical survival programming. They demonstrate genuine care for all life forms, regardless of species relationship or potential benefit. Trade Minister. Sluggoth coiled his tentacles in distress. This makes them more dangerous, not less. A species that cannot be predicted or controlled through normal incentives threatens the stability of everything we have built. But the youngest council member, Harmony, chimed with a different interpretation. Perhaps they are not dangerous. Perhaps they are showing us what we could become if we chose cooperation over control. The test that was supposed to reveal human deception had instead revealed the poverty of alien imagination. No species in galactic history had ever demonstrated such genuine selfless behavior. The Council had to face an uncomfortable truth. They were not dealing with a clever military threat or hidden conquest plan. They were witnessing something unprecedented in the universe. A species that had learned to find strength through compassion and meaning through helping others. The implications were staggering. If humans could maintain advanced technology while caring for all life, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about survival and success was wrong. The test had backfired completely. Instead of exposing human weakness, it had exposed the limitations of alien thinking. For 3,000 years, the Council had assumed that all intelligent life was fundamentally selfish. Now, they had to consider the possibility that selfishness was not a requirement for intelligence. It was simply a choice, and humanity had chosen differently. News of the mining rescue spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace communications. Within weeks, every inhabited world knew about the humans who risked everything to save strangers. The story grew as it traveled, becoming legend on the war. Torn border between the Reptilian Empire and the Crystalline Confederacy, fighting had continued for over 2 centuries. The conflict had started over mining rights and evolved into a bitter hatred that consumed resources from both civilizations. Ambassador So Young arrived at the neutral zone between the two empires. Her ship carried no weapons, only cultural exchange equipment and supplies for refugee camps. She requested permission to establish the first interspecies cultural center in a location both sides could access. The reptilian General Claw initially refused permission. Humans are not part of this conflict. Why do you interfere in our ancient war? Because war hurts everyone. So Young replied gently, we do not take sides, we simply want to help beings from both civilizations learn about each other. When people understand each other, fighting becomes much harder. The crystalline commander Prism was equally suspicious. Your species gains nothing by stopping our conflict. What are your true intentions? Our intention is to help your children grow up in peace. So Young opened a holographic display showing human children playing with alien friends on Council Station. When young beings learn that differences make life interesting instead of scary, they choose friendship over fighting. Both military leaders were skeptical, but they were curious about human culture. The war had been expensive and destructive for generations. Perhaps a brief cultural exchange would provide useful intelligence about human capabilities. The cultural center opened in a former trading post that had been abandoned when the war started. So Young brought displays of art, music, literature, and history from dozens of different civilizations, including Earth-human. Staff taught classes in conflict resolution, while alien artists shared their own cultural traditions. The first visitors were military intelligence officers from both sides, trying to gather information about human technology. Instead, they found something unexpected. Beings from enemy civilizations working together to create beautiful things. A young reptilian soldier named Scale met a crystalline civilian named Chime. At an art class, neither had ever spoken to someone from the enemy species. Before, they discovered they both loved music and had similar dreams of traveling to distant stars. Why do your people fight mine? Scale asked Chime as they worked on a collaborative sculpture. I do not know. Chime replied honestly, her crystal form shifting through confused colors. My parents say your people are violent and dangerous, but you seem kind and creative. Scale laughed bitterly. My commanders say your people are cold and calculating, but you create the most beautiful music I have ever heard. I think our leaders have forgotten that we are all just beings trying to live good lives. Their friendship became a symbol of what was possible when fear was replaced by understanding. Other soldiers and civilians began visiting the cultural center meeting. Their supposed enemies face-to-face changed everything. Meanwhile, Chef High One had opened a restaurant that served foods from 40 different worlds. The menu was impossible. Traditional gastropod slime cuisine next to crystalline. Energy drinks next to human comfort food from a dozen Earth cultures. The restaurant became a gathering place where beings who had never shared a meal could experience each other's traditions. A mechanical unit named Circuit discovered that human chocolate-activated pleasure circuits she never knew existed. A reptilian warrior found that gastropod fermented algae reminded him of childhood memories. Food is the universal language, High One explained to curious visitors. When you share a meal with someone, they stop being a stranger and become a friend. Every culture has foods that represent love, celebration, and comfort. The restaurant sparked a culinary revolution across the galaxy. Worlds that had never traded with each other began sharing recipes. Alien chefs traveled to Earth to learn fusion cooking techniques that celebrated diversity instead of hiding it. But the most powerful change was happening at the governmental level. The economic systems that had kept species separated and competing were becoming irrelevant. Worlds with human fusion reactors no longer needed to import energy. Planets with human medical technology could heal their own populations. The Gastropod Trade Federation had controlled commerce in their sector for centuries by restricting access to advanced manufacturing technology. Now human engineers were teaching anyone who asked how to build quantum fabricators that could produce anything needed. Trade Admiral Gloop watched his empire crumble as former client species became self-sufficient. Our entire economy depends on scarcity, he complained to his advisors. If everyone can manufacture their own goods, what do they need us for? His economic advisor, Ooze, studied the trade reports. Perhaps we could offer services instead of goods. The humans seem to value cultural exchange, education, and artistic collaboration more than material wealth. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of selling things, civilizations could share knowledge, experiences, and creativity. The old system, based on control and dependence, was being replaced by networks of mutual support and voluntary cooperation. Some council members panicked, fearing the end of their authority. Admiral Kresh called for military intervention to stop human influence before it destroyed galactic order. But younger representatives embraced the change's harmony. The young Zephyrian had been promoted to head the Council Reform Committee. She worked with representatives from every species to redesign galactic government based on cooperation instead of control. We have spent 3,000 years managing conflicts and scarcity, she announced to the assembled delegates. The humans have shown us that abundance and peace are possible when we choose cooperation over competition. The reform process was remarkably smooth. Species that had been enemies for generations began working together to solve shared problems. The threat of resource wars disappeared when everyone had access to the same advanced technologies. The Mechanical Collective offered their processing power to help design better habitat systems. The Gastropod Federation shared their agricultural knowledge to help transform desert worlds. The Crystalline Confederacy provided their energy manipulation techniques to improve fusion reactor efficiency. For the first time in galactic history, civilizations were competing to see who could help their neighbors most effectively, instead of who could exploit them most efficiently. Reports came in from across the galaxy showing unprecedented cooperation. The border conflicts that had defined interstellar politics were ending as former enemies chose to build together instead of fight on the former war zone between reptilians and crystallines. A joint colony was being established where both species worked together to terraform a planet that neither could have conquered alone. The refugee camps that had existed for centuries were being transformed into thriving communities as displaced beings were welcomed into societies that had previously rejected them. Educational exchanges were established where young beings from different worlds could learn from each other, spreading the human example of celebrating. Diversity artists from dozens of species were collaborating on works that no single civilization could have created alone, blending different cultural traditions into new forms of beauty. Even the most conservative council members had to admit the results were remarkable. Crime rates dropped as beings found meaningful work helping others. Productivity increased as cooperation replaced competition. Population, health, and happiness reached levels never before recorded. The galaxy was discovering what humans had learned on Earth, that strength came from lifting others up, not pushing them down. That diversity was a source of creativity and resilience, not weakness. That the universe became brighter when every voice was heard and valued. But perhaps the most significant change was in how beings thought about themselves and others. The assumption that life was fundamentally about competition and survival was being replaced by the understanding that life was about connection and growth young. Aliens who had grown up during the human cultural revolution could not understand why their parents had ever thought that helping others was weakness. They saw cooperation as natural and competition as wasteful. The galaxy was not just changing its laws and systems. It was changing its heart. And at the center of this transformation was the simple human belief that everyone deserved kindness, respect, and the chance to contribute their unique gifts to the cosmic community. The new reality was emerging where differences were celebrated, problems were solved together, and the universe was becoming a place where all beings could thrive. 3 weeks after the humans first arrived, more Earth ships began appearing near Council Station. Each vessel brought new surprises that left the alien leadership increasingly worried. Captain Jin Woo arrived with a massive medical frigate filled. With human doctors and advanced healing equipment, the ship was unlike anything in the Galactic fleet. Instead of weapons, it carried hundreds of medical beds, surgical equipment that could operate on any known species, and supplies to treat millions of patients. Captain Jin Woo immediately offered free health care to any being who needed it. Refugee camps throughout the galaxy had existed for centuries, housing beings displaced by wars, natural disasters, and economic collapse. These camps were overcrowded, underfunded, and filled with hopeless creatures who had nowhere else to go. Jin Woo took his medical ship to the largest refugee camp in the Outer Rim. There he found 12 different species living in terrible conditions. Families crowded into shelters built for single beings, children sick from malnutrition, adults injured from unsafe working conditions. The human medical team set up treatment centers and began healing everyone they could reach. They brought food from Earth that had been specially prepared to nourish different alien biologies. They provided clean water using portable purification systems. They even brought toys and games for the refugee children. An old gastropod refugee named Elder Slime had lived in the camp. For 30 years after his homeworld was destroyed by a solar flare, he watched human doctors treating his infected wounds with medicines that actually worked. "Why do you help us?" he asked Dr. Min Jung as she changed his bandages. "We have nothing to give you in return because you are alive and you deserve to be healthy," she replied. "That is reason enough. We help because it is the right thing to do, not because we expect payment." Elder Slime began crying, which was unusual for his species. Gastropods rarely showed emotion, but the kindness of strangers moved him deeply. In 3 decades, no one had ever treated him with such care. Meanwhile, Dr. Min SEO arrived with an agricultural vessel that looked more like a floating garden than a spaceship. Her ship contained samples of Earth crops that had been modified to grow in different alien environments. She also brought knowledge about farming techniques that could increase food production on struggling worlds. The planet Eridus had suffered from famine for generations. The reptilian colonists there had tried everything to grow enough food in their harsh desert climate. Their crops failed year after year, leaving the population barely surviving. Min SEO landed on Eridus and studied the soil composition, atmosphere, and climate conditions. Within a week, she had identified the problems and created solutions. She introduced earth plants that thrived in dry conditions and taught the colonists crop rotation methods that restored nutrients. To the soil chief farmer, Scaled watched in amazement as green shoots emerged from ground that had been barren for decades. The human plants not only grew, they improved the soil for future crops, making it easier to grow native foods as well. "How did you learn to heal dead Earth?" he asked Min Seo as they walked through the first successful harvest in years. "On Earth, we learned that the planet takes care of us, so we must take care of the planet," she explained. "When soil is tired, we give it rest. When crops are sick, we find natural ways to heal them. Everything is connected." The successful harvest on Eridus was celebrated across the galaxy. News spread to other worlds suffering from agricultural problems. Within days, human agricultural specialists were receiving requests from dozens of planets. But the most unexpected arrival was artist Ye Jin, who came not with technology or medicine, but with something aliens had never considered: valuable creativity. She established art therapy centers where beings could explore emotions through painting, music, and sculpture. On the industrial world of Mechanicus, workers had labored for centuries in factories that produced goods for the galactic economy. The silicon-based inhabitants had never taken time for personal expression. Believing that efficiency was the only measure of success, Yi Jin set up art studios in worker housing areas and invited anyone to come try creating something beautiful. The response surprised everyone. Beings who had spent their lives operating machines discovered they could paint landscapes that captured the beauty they had never noticed. A factory supervisor named Unit 47 created a sculpture from discarded machine parts. The twisted metal somehow expressed feelings of loneliness and hope that he had never acknowledged existed within his programming. "I did not know I could feel until I made this," he told Ye Jin as they looked at his artwork. "Why does creating something unnecessary bring such satisfaction?" "Because beauty and expression are necessary," she replied. "They feed parts of the soul that logic cannot reach. When you create art, you discover parts of yourself that work and duty alone cannot fulfill." The council leadership watched these developments with growing alarm. Their emergency sessions became daily occurrences as reports poured in from across the galaxy. Wherever humans went, they left changed societies behind them. Admiral Kresh stood before the assembled council leaders, his crystal form glowing red with agitation. "These humans are disrupting the fundamental order of galactic civilization. For 3,000 years, we have maintained stability through controlled resource distribution. Now they give away advanced technology, freely trade." Minister Sluggoth slammed his tentacles on the conference table. "The economic implications are staggering. If every species can produce unlimited clean energy and cure their own diseases, what happens to the trade networks that keep smaller civilizations dependent on larger ones?" The mechanical collective representative binary clicked and whirred as she processed data. Analysis indicates that human generosity could collapse the current power structure. Every species would have equal access to advanced technology, eliminating the advantages that prevent chaos. The youngest council member, a Zephyrian named Harmony, chimed with a different perspective. "Perhaps the current system is the problem. If scarcity and dependence create stability, then our stability is built on suffering. These humans offer abundance and freedom." The older council members turned their attention to her with disapproval. Harmony continued undaunted. "I have reviewed the reports from worlds that have received human aid. Conflict has decreased productivity, has increased population health, and happiness have improved dramatically. How is this a bad outcome because it is uncontrolled?" Trade Minister Sluggoth replied, "When change happens this rapidly, entire civilizations can collapse. Some species need strong leadership to prevent them from destroying themselves." Admiral Kresh activated holographic displays showing the galactic political map. "The balance of power that prevents major wars depends on resource scarcity. If everyone has unlimited energy and medicine, what prevents the aggressive species from expanding without restraint?" But the report suggested otherwise. Worlds that had received human aid were not expanding aggressively. Instead, they were using their new prosperity to help their neighbors. The generous example of humanity was spreading from species to species. A communication came in from the border worlds where humans had been working with refugee populations. The message contained footage that stunned the council. 3 different species that had been enemies for centuries were working together to build new colonies for displaced beings. Former enemies were sharing resources, protecting each other's children, and celebrating festivals together. The humans had somehow taught them that cooperation created better results than competition. The reptilian war chief Fang activated his battle readiness protocols. This is clearly a military strategy. The humans are creating alliances by appearing helpful, When they have enough support, they will reveal their true intentions and conquer the galaxy. But when Council investigators examined human ships, they found no evidence of military planning, no weapon designs, no invasion strategies, no surveillance equipment intended to gather intelligence about alien defenses. Instead, they found libraries containing the literature and history of hundreds of Earth cultures, medical research facilities working on cures for diseases that affected alien species, communication, centers designed to help different species understand each other better. Most disturbing of all, they found entertainment systems, games that taught cooperation instead of competition, music that celebrated diversity instead of promoting human superiority, stories that featured alien characters as heroes while humans played supporting roles. The investigators returned to the Council with a troubling conclusion. The humans appeared to be exactly what they claimed to be, a species that had learned to find strength through helping others. They showed no signs of hidden agendas, deception, or conquest planning. This revelation created more fear than comfort among the Council leadership. A military threat could be understood and countered, but a species that genuinely wanted to help everyone challenged every assumption about how intelligent life operated in the universe. Emergency protocols were activated. Security forces were placed on high alert. Contingency plans were developed for containing the human influence if it became necessary. But even as the Council prepared for potential crisis, reports continued arriving from across the galaxy. Worlds were healing. Conflicts were ending. Species were cooperating in ways that had never been seen before. The humans had accomplished something unprecedented. They were changing the galaxy not through force or manipulation, but through simple kindness. And Dr. Hyun-A walked into the Council Medical Center carrying a small silver case. The alien doctors who had gathered to meet her represented 12 different species. Each had tried for over a century to find a cure for the necrosis plague that had killed billions of beings across the galaxy. The disease was a nightmare that ate living tissue from the inside out. It jumped between species regardless of their biology. Silicon-based beings, organic creatures, even energy forms could be infected. Once it started spreading through a population, nothing could stop it. Entire worlds had been abandoned when the plague arrived. The mollusk chief medical officer, Dr. Gorath, extended his tentacles in greeting. His species had lost 3 colony worlds to the plague, and his own research had failed countless times. Human doctor, your reputation precedes you. Our scientists have studied the genetic samples we sent to your planet. Did you find anything useful? Hyuna smiled and opened her case. Inside were thousands of small vials filled with what looked like ordinary bacteria, but these tiny organisms had been modified using Earth science to attack the necrosis plague at its source. We created these using beneficial bacteria from our planet. Each vial contains enough treatment to cure an entire city. The alien doctors crowded around the case with excitement. Dr. Gorath picked up one vial with his tentacles. This seems too simple. How can such basic organisms defeat a plague that has resisted our most advanced treatments? Because sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones, Hyun-A explained. The plague works by breaking down cellular barriers, but these bacteria repair those barriers faster than the plague can break them down. We tested them on samples from 47 different species. They work on all of them. She activated a holographic display showing the bacteria in action. The tiny organisms swarmed over infected tissue like an army of microscopic healers rebuilding what the plague destroyed. Within hours, diseased cells returned to perfect health. A crystalline doctor named Zenith chimed with disbelief. Your bacteria can cure beings they have never encountered before. How is this possible? Hyun-A pointed to the molecular structure displayed in the hologram. Life is connected across the universe at the most basic level. These bacteria don't care what species they are helping. They simply recognize damaged tissue and repair it. Our planet taught us that all life deserves to be healed. The alien doctors began calculating how many beings could be saved. The numbers were staggering. Billions of lives could be returned to health. Worlds that had been quarantined for decades could welcome their children home. Again, Dr. Gorath looked up from his calculations. "Human doctor, what do you require in payment for this cure? Our governments will pay any price." Hyun Ae shook her head gently. "We don't want payment. We want these beings to live healthy lives. That is reward enough for us. Please take the cure to everyone who needs it." The alien doctors stood in shocked silence. They had expected to negotiate for years over the price of such valuable medicine. Instead, the humans offered it freely with no conditions or demands. Meanwhile, in the engineering section of the station, Jun-ho was demonstrating fusion technology to a group of amazed alien scientists. His portable reactor was no bigger than a refrigerator, but it produced enough clean energy to power an entire city. The gastropod energy minister Sluggoth examined the device with his optical sensors. "Impossible. This reactor violates several known laws of physics. How does it produce so much power from so little fuel?" Jun-ho opened the reactor housing. "To show the internal mechanisms. We learned to copy what our sun does, but on a smaller scale. The fusion process combines simple hydrogen atoms to create helium. The energy released is enormous but completely clean." A silicon-based engineer named Kristak ran calculations through her crystalline matrix. "The energy output is incredible. This could solve the power shortage that has limited expansion for smaller civilizations for millennia." "Exactly," Jun-ho replied. "We noticed that many species struggle with energy production because they rely on dangerous methods. Our fusion reactors are safe, efficient, and use the most common element in the universe. Hydrogen is everywhere." The assembled alien engineers began discussing the implications. Colonies that barely survived on rationed power could flourish. Cities could expand without fear of blackouts. Entire civilizations could advance beyond their current limitations. Sluggoth slithered closer to Jun-ho, human engineer. "Your people must expect significant compensation for this technology. It could revolutionize galactic civilization." Jun-ho smiled and shook his head. "We built these reactors because we wanted to help. When we heard about energy shortages affecting peaceful beings, we knew we had to share our solution." The aliens looked at each other with growing confusion. Every species they had ever encountered guarded their advanced technology jealously, trading secrets only for enormous profits or political advantages. These humans seemed to operate by completely different rules. In the cultural center, pilot Su Min was sharing something even more confusing with a group of young alien beings. She had set up displays showing Earth music, art, and literature. The alien youth crowded around with fascination. A young reptilian named Scarth picked up a book and flipped through the pages. "These symbols tell stories that never happened. Why would you create false information? Because imagination is as important as facts," Su Min explained. "Stories help us understand ourselves and others. They teach us about courage, love, friendship, and hope. Even though the events are invented, the feelings they create are real." She played a recording of human music. The melody filled the room with sounds that had no practical purpose, yet somehow moved the listeners in ways they could not explain. A young Zephyrian began glowing in rhythm with the music, her crystal body resonating with the harmonies. Art therapy specialist Ye Jin showed them paintings created by human children. Each picture was different, showing how individual minds interpreted the same world in unique ways. She handed brushes and paint to the alien youth, encouraging them to create their own art. "What should we paint?" asked a small gastropod child. "Whatever makes you happy," Yejin replied. "Paint your feelings, your dreams, your favorite memories. There are no wrong answers in art." The young aliens began creating their first artworks. Something magical happened. They stopped worrying about efficiency or purpose and simply enjoyed the act of creation. Their paintings were awkward and messy, but filled with genuine emotion. The adult alien observers watched in amazement as their children laughed and played, while creating art. None of their species had ever considered that emotions were worth studying, or that creative expression could have value. Su Min gathered the group around a large screen to show them something special. A recording of humans from different countries working together on the International Space Station. The beings on screen spoke different languages, had different colored skin, and came from different cultures, but they worked as one team. See how they cooperate, she pointed out. They could compete and fight, but instead they choose to build something beautiful together. This is what humans learned that made us strong. Unity creates more than division ever could. The young aliens watched with wonder as the human astronauts shared meals, taught each other their languages, and worked side by side on experiments that would benefit all of Earth. An older crystalline observer named Professor Harmonic chimed thoughtfully, "These humans demonstrate something we have never seen. Before they appear to genuinely care about the welfare of beings they have never met." Back in the main conference room, the council leadership was meeting in emergency session. The implications of human generosity were staggering. Their medical cures could save billions, their energy. Technology could transform civilization, and their cultural gifts were teaching alien children to think in completely new ways. The reptilian trade lord Vex paced back and forth, his claws clicking on the metal floor. This makes no sense. No species gives away their most valuable assets without expecting something in return. They must have hidden motives. The silicon-based collective representative process analyzed the data through quantum calculations I have, examined their ship designs, communication systems, and cultural artifacts. I detect no evidence of deception or hidden agendas. Their behavior appears to be genuine. Admiral Kresh of the Zephyrian fleet stood at attention, his crystal body pulsing with concern. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no species has ever acted against their own self-interest to this degree. Either humans are the greatest threat we have ever faced, or they represent something entirely new. The council members sat in troubled silence. They had built their civilization on the assumption that all intelligent beings were fundamentally selfish, motivated by survival and advantage. These humans challenged everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. The meeting was interrupted by urgent reports from across the station. Alien patients were recovering from the necrosis. Plague colony. Worlds were requesting fusion reactors. Young beings were asking their parents about art and music, and friendship change was spreading through the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. And at the center of it all were humans who seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would find their kindness unusual. The council realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had advanced not despite their compassion, but because of it. These beings from the small blue planet were about to teach the galaxy what it truly meant to be. The giant silver station floated in space like a metal moon. Among the stars, the Galactic Council had built their home 3,000 years ago, when the first alien races learned to travel between worlds. The station was bigger than most planets, with corridors that stretched for miles and meeting halls that could hold millions of beings. Inside the main communication center, alarms started beeping. A young Zephyrian officer named Clix looked at the screens with confusion. His crystal body glowed blue with worry as he stared at the strange signals coming from a small planet far away in the outer rim of the galaxy. The signals were different from anything the Council had ever received. Most new species sent simple mathematical patterns, or basic greetings when they first discovered space travel. But this signal contained something else: music, mathematical equations, pictures of strange creatures walking on two legs, and something that made no sense at all. Stories, Clix called his supervisor, who called her supervisor, who called the Grand Admiral. The message traveled up the chain of command until it reached the highest levels of the Council. Within hours, every important being in the galaxy knew about the strange transmissions from the blue planet called Earth. The signals showed a species that called themselves humans. They seemed to have developed faster than light travel, which was impressive, but not unusual. What was unusual were the other things in their transmissions. They sent recordings of something called music, which was organized sound that served no practical purpose. They sent stories about imaginary people doing impossible things. They sent pictures of their planet, showing vast oceans and green lands, teeming with life. But strangest of all, they sent messages of peace and friendship to beings they had never met. The humans seemed to assume that other intelligent life would want to be friends. This confused the Council members greatly. Most species' first contact messages were either demands for resources or warnings to stay away from their territory. Commander Tae Min stood on the bridge of the New Sol as his ship dropped out of hyperspace near the Council station. He was a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands who had spent years preparing for this moment. Behind him stood his team engineer Bo Ra, who had designed their fusion drive using principles the rest of the galaxy thought were impossible. Xenobiologist Wu Jin, whose research had already helped solve several diseases that plagued alien worlds, and 12 other specialists, each chosen for their skills and their ability to represent humanity. Well, the Council station grew larger on their view screen until it filled. The entire display Tae Min had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for the actual size. The station was like a city floating in space with thousands of ships docked at its ports and millions of lights twinkling across its surface. Bo Ra checked her instruments and smiled. The fusion drive had worked perfectly, bringing them across the galaxy in just 3 weeks, when it should have taken months. Her design used clean energy that produced no harmful radiation, unlike the messy antimatter drives most species relied on. She was proud of what human science had achieved. Wu Jin studied the readings from the alien ships around them. Each vessel represented a different species with different biology and different needs. His samples of beneficial bacteria from Earth might help some of them. He had spent years learning about alien physiology from the limited data available, and now he would finally meet these beings in person. A message came through their communication system, welcoming them to Council Station. The voice was translated into Korean by their computer, but Tae Min could hear the uncertainty in the original alien language. The Council was not sure what to expect from these humans. Their ship was guided to a docking bay, designed for first contact situations. It was smaller than the main ports, but still large enough to hold a dozen Earth vessels. Security was tight with armed guards from multiple species watching their arrival, but Tae Min had expected this most. Species were cautious when meeting new civilizations as the New Sol settled into its berth. Tae Min gathered his team. They wore simple blue uniforms that represented Earth, but carried no weapons. The only items they brought were gifts, cultural, artifacts from their homeworld, scientific data that might help other species, and medical supplies including the cure for several alien diseases. The airlock opened, and they walked into the station. The artificial gravity felt normal, and the air was breathable thanks to the Council atmospheric systems designed to accommodate most known species. The corridors were wide and tall-built to handle beings much larger than humans. Their first sight of alien life was overwhelming. A group of gastropods slithered past their massive slug-like bodies, leaving trails of slime. A family of reptilians walked by, their scaled skin reflecting the station lights. Crystalline Zephyrians moved with musical chimes, while mechanical beings rolled on multiple wheels. But what surprised Tae Min most was how the aliens looked at them. Most species either stared with fear or ignored new arrivals completely. But these beings seemed curious. Their various eye sensors and other organs focused on the humans, with what could only be described as interest. They were escorted to a meeting room where representatives from several major species waited. The Zephyrian ambassador towered over them, his crystal body shifting through different colors. The gastropod, trade minister, sat in a specialized chair that accommodated his massive form. A reptilian military commander stood at attention, his uniform decorated with symbols of rank. The Zephyrian spoke first, his voice translated into perfect Korean, "Welcome to Council Station Humans of Earth. We have studied your transmissions and find them most unusual." Taemin bowed respectfully, a gesture that seemed to surprise the aliens. "Thank you for receiving us. We come in peace, hoping to learn from you and share what we have learned." The gastropod trade minister leaned forward, his eye stalks focusing on the human commander. "Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel, which places you among the advanced civilizations. However, your cultural transmissions are puzzling. You send music stories and what appears to be entertainment. Why waste transmission power on such things?" Bo-Ra stepped forward with a gentle smile. "Because life should be more than just survival." She gestured to a small device that projected holographic images from Earth. "These show our art, our stories, our music. They represent what makes us human beyond our technology." The aliens exchanged glances that clearly showed confusion. Most species contacted the Council for protection resources or trade opportunities. These humans seemed different. They offered things freely and spoke of friendship as if it were natural. The reptilian commander spoke, his voice rough and suspicious. "Your transmissions show no military formations, no weapons. Displays no territorial claims. How does your species defend itself?" "Woo!" Jin answered calmly. "We have learned that the best defense is to have no enemies. We solve conflicts through talking and helping each other. When natural disasters strike our planet, different nations work together to save lives. When diseases spread, we share our medical knowledge freely." This statement caused more confusion among the alien representatives. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no species had ever claimed to prefer cooperation over conquest. The concept seemed impossible to them. Taemin sensed their confusion and decided to demonstrate human nature directly. He activated a portable projector that showed scenes from Earth, humans working together to build schools in poor areas, doctors traveling to dangerous places to treat the sick, engineers sharing clean water technology with communities that needed it, children from different countries playing together despite speaking different languages. The images showed humans helping each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They showed a species that had learned to find strength in unity rather than dominance. The aliens watched in silence as scene after scene displayed acts of kindness between strangers. The Zephyrian ambassador was the first to break the silence. "These images suggest your species acts against its own self-interest. Why help beings who cannot repay you because everyone deserves help?" Min replied simply. "On our world, we learned that when we lift others up, we all rise together. We discovered that sharing knowledge makes everyone smarter, not just ourselves." The alien representatives sat in stunned silence. They had never encountered a species that viewed other beings as potential friends rather than threats or resources. The humans had arrived at Council Station not seeking anything for themselves, but offering to share everything they had. As the meeting continued, it became clear that humanity would change everything about how the galaxy operated. These beings from the small blue planet had achieved something no other species had managed. They had advanced technology combined with genuine compassion for all life. The council members realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that measured success not by what they could take, but by what they could give.